Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you this week. I'm so excited to share this week's guest with you. Her name is Heidi Rose Robbins, and I must confess that I had been stalking her Instagram for quite a while. She is a poet, and I am obsessed with poetry. I've always loved it. I read poetry constantly. If I go to the bookstore, the first two sections I go to are psychology and poetry.
Mhm.
So I'm seeing her nod her head also.
Yes, I was going to say, me too, me too.
Heidi is a professional astrologer and has been for 25 years. She has helped thousands of clients all over the globe live with more authenticity and clarity. She hosts two podcasts, the Radiance podcast, which has been on forever, by the way. I was listening to the back catalog today. It's beautiful, featuring poetry, astrology, and good company, and Chart Your Career with co host Ellen Fondelier. Fondelier. Sorry if I'm saying her name
No, you're
incorrectly.
good. Fontanelle is perfect.
Fondelier.
Yeah.
Twice a year, she leads Radiant Life retreats for people wishing to take a deeper dive into her work. Heidi has written two books of poetry, This Beckoning Ceaseless Beauty and Wild Compassion, both so beautiful, and has been a featured poet at two TEDx events. Last year, her 12-book series, The Zodiac Love Letters, was published by One Idea Press, and this upcoming fall, her new book, Everyday Radiance, based on her daily Instagram offerings, will be published by Chronicle. I can't wait to read it. Welcome,
Yay.
Heidi.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. How was we'll get into the astrology in 1 second, but I'm so curious about your latest book. How was the process of writing this time around, now that you've done
You
it?
know what was so interesting about this book is that it sort of was a culminating book, right? So I've been doing the Instagram moon notes for almost 5 years now,
Wow.
and it became clear that that would be a good thing to put into book form in some way. But because they're based on the moon, they
They
disappear with
change.
each
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah.
So we came up with the idea of working according to the sun. So it's a 365-day zodiac inspired book where each month we're honing in on the sign of the month. And so there are prompts and but I do draw from the notes that I wrote before. So it wasn't
Yeah.
pure start from scratch kind of energy. It was almost more editorial and creating the system for the book, you know.
Way
But
to
it was fun to
go.
write. It was fun to put it together, and it took some days for sure, some
I'm
months.
sure. That's so exciting. I love to write also, and I have written two books, but I get caught in the editorial process. So in the next year or so, I have to get on. I have to hire someone or find someone who wants to edit because I get caught up and then nothing happens.
Well, you have a Virgo moon, so that is tricky. You have the editorial eye, but you can get too like stuck in the minutia, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So Heidi has so graciously offered to talk about my chart a little bit, and I'm excited. I have been diving into astrology head first, and I've had a lot of different astrologers in my mentorship program, and they're incredible human beings. But I find that each time someone reads my chart, I learn something completely new. So even
Yes.
just that bit about being a Virgo and getting caught up in the editorial process sounds very on point.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm happy to just share a few things about your chart, and maybe as I share
Yeah.
it, you can, for your listeners, one of the things that's unique about the astrology that I practice is the rising sign is really the most important position. It is the sign that was at the horizon the moment you took your first breath, and you can imagine it as what is rising in you, what is growing in you, and you have Cancer rising,
Yeah.
and you're a Cancer sun, right? So you
Yes.
have a double whammy because the sun and the rising sign are the most important positions. And, and what that says to me is that the sun sign is the personality self, but you are also here to evolve the energy of Cancer to its highest level, right? So
Yeah.
there's that gorgeous phrase for Cancer that says, I build a lighted house and therein dwell. So you just told me you're wanting to build a house, which many Cancerians do want to, actually build or renovate. The home is very important, but you also have to think of it at an energetic level, that you're a sensitive being, and you have to take care of your internal landscape, and you have to fill it with light. And what's so beautiful about your chart is you also have Mercury and Jupiter in the sign of Leo in the first house, which means that you take all your sensitivity and you bring it to expression in your authentic leadership, doing things like this. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And I think part of what kind of jumped off the cliff in that way was
Yeah.
starting this healing practice that I run, because I had been doing healing work for other people, for other organizations and humanitarian aid and those kinds of things for years. And I really loved it. But I knew that there was more to be explored, and there were growth opportunities for myself as a human, but
Yeah.
also in my healing practice by going off and doing it on my own. So that definitely.
Cancerians are very good at running their own businesses. They're very resourceful. And when you talk about humanitarian aid as well, the Cancer energy starts out by saying, well, this is my little family that I'm going to take care of. But as Cancer grows in consciousness, it grows to include the entire human family, you know? So you're like, oh my God, somebody is in pain across the globe. I'm in pain, right?
Yes.
And of course you have to be careful with that, because Cancer can just absorb it all.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your sun in Cancer in the 12th house, which is the most sensitive area and the most compassionate area. So sometimes you're like, just leave me alone. I have to close every door and lock every key. You know, it's like, I have to just be left alone because I'm so sensitive. And then sometimes you're like, my compassion is such that I have to be of service in the world, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
Makes
would say
sense.
I vacillate between those two extremes constantly. It's either all out, let's help everybody, or I need 2 weeks all by myself in a cabin.
Exactly. And you know, there's no doubt throughout your life, you do need huge swaths of personal retreat time, because
Mm-hmm.
you're a person that wants to be of service. You've got the moon in Virgo. That's one of the most powerful positions for wanting to be of service
Yeah.
and wanting to, you know, humbly do something practical that will have an effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to say, you also have Mars and Venus in Gemini, the sign of the writer. So, you know,
Ooh.
those books do need to get out to the world.
Okay. Thank you for telling me. That's good to know. Good to know. As you mentioned before, Heidi and I were talking before we started recording, and I was saying that my partner and I are dying to build our own container home. And we, you know, if you're a longtime listener, you know about my health issues. I have a condition called multiple chemical sensitivity. And so things, you know, it's all part and parcel of the double cancer, right? Like my nervous system is so sensitive, and I have to really kind of baby it.
Yeah.
And so traditional houses don't work so well for me, and I've been renting forever, and I have to keep moving when something happens. And so we're ready to just build our own place.
Yeah.
And we are not able to build a container home in LA, plus it's crazy expensive. So we're looking into outer areas. And I wondered if my chart had anything to say about that. Like, we looked into the desert, but I found that to be really isolating. And I grew up in a city with houses all around me, so I don't want that much privacy.
Yeah. Well, there's something, you know, there's something called astrocartography, where you can actually look at different areas as where certain planets are having an impact in certain areas through your chart, which is very powerful. So some, you know, you have like a Jupiter line that might be going through a certain city, right? So that's something that I can't do right now, but it is a powerful thing to look into. But you can look into the fact that one of the things that I love to explore is the progressed moon. And, you know, the progressed moon for you just shifted. And what's interesting about it is it had been in Aries, which is like, it's time for the new. And, you know, this is the part of you that said, it's time to build this sustainable house. It's time to take action. But
Mm-hmm.
only just a month ago or a month and a half ago, it moved into Taurus. And one thing about Taurus for sure is that it needs the natural world, and it needs beauty, and it needs stillness, and it needs quiet for the garden to grow, you know? So that's a big part of what you're going to need around you, you know? But when it comes to exact location, you might even really want to work with an astrocartographer, you know, to see if you could find a location that was really conducive.
I can tell this. I worked with an astrocartographer a few years ago,
Oh,
and I'm
good.
from New York, and I loved New York. That was where I started my healing practice,
Yeah.
and that's on my Jupiter line.
Okay. Well, are you willing to make that big a shift?
No.
Well,
And LA is
yeah.
on my Saturn line for career, but it's on, I think it's on my North Node, which is also in Virgo, for friends and family. And I've completely found that here in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the radius for our astrocartography listeners out there? Is it like
Oh, well, it's not New York to here. I mean,
right?
I actually don't even know the radius, but you can look at other things. You can say, for example, in August of this year, you will
Yeah.
start to have, in fact, is it already underway? Let me just double check this.
Okay.
Because you are going to have, it's already underway, and I'm curious about when you really started to think about doing the sustainable house. But you are in the middle of Pluto trine your moon,
What does that
right?
mean?
So moon is your physical home, moon is your
Okay.
body,
Okay.
Pluto is a planet of great healing and depth and shedding an old self and growing into something new. And when Pluto, anything is trine or in harmony with the moon, it tends to bring a big focus to your home, your body, and your physical home. So I would just say, it's going to hit even again, this Pluto trine the moon. It already hit once more at the beginning of this year.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know, there's something that is in support of that change for sure. I know sometimes when you're having to find a place to build a sustainable home, it can be years of red tape, but
Right.
maybe something about the Pluto moon is very much like supporting a graceful process around this.
Okay. And so, for the other listeners, if we're looking at our progressed moons, I know many of my listeners know how to do that. They're quite fabulous and woke. What is the most important thing to look at when we're looking at our progressed moon?
I have a workbook, a progress moon workbook, which you order it, and then it gives you the list of where your progressed moon has been throughout your entire life. So number one, the
Neat.
first wonderful thing to do is to go back through and study these 2.5 year periods, because the progressed moon spends 2 to 2.5 years in a sign, and
Okay.
you will absolutely feel the resonance of the sign. Like,
Okay.
you say, oh, when the progressed moon was in Aries, that's when I launched my new career. When it was in Taurus, that's when I started to make money. When it was in Gemini, that's when I finally finished my book. So you
Yeah.
start to watch these things. So the significance of the progressed moon is simply this: it is a time where you are really getting to steep in a particular energy that may or may not be a powerful part of your chart. So
Okay.
if your progressed moon is in Aries and you don't have any Aries, guess what? It's a very significant moment for you to use a bold, assertive leadership energy in a whole new way. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
So my progressed moon right now is in service of me building this sustainable home and in service of me writing this book.
Well, right. I mean, the Taurus moon, I mean, the progressed Taurus moon, I would say, is very much about manifesting. It's about manifesting the beautiful. It's about slowing down and growing steadily.
Okay.
I would say it's about nature and even sustainability. So there is something like, okay, what's the next tangible step? That's the progressed moon in Taurus. And how can we nourish the soil? Your book, I would say you can think of the book as like, it's time to manifest the book.
Yeah.
But you also just always in your chart have this wonderful stimulating Gemini energy that your mind is fertile, you have lots to say. You just need to
Always.
not have your moon tip over to the perfectionist in such a way that doesn't allow you to complete.
That is completely my greatest challenge in life,
Yeah,
tipping into
yeah.
the perfectionism. Yes. Um,
That's the problem for all of us with our moons is it presents the obstacle. It presents the pattern that doesn't serve us, and it invites us to evolve that pattern.
frustrating.
But you have to remember, the best thing about the moon is it is the healer. I mean, Virgo rules physical, emotional, and mental health. So you often start on healing path that is painful, but then you become the healer and you
That's
become
exactly
devoted.
what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was in chronic pain for so long. I had a million different medical conditions after working in humanitarian aid, and I discovered how to heal myself using transformational healing. And so that's what I share with people now. It's great
Beautiful.
and it
Beautiful.
works.
Yeah, yeah. The Cancerian energy I've seen often also presents there's a physical body because you're absorbing so much. It often is a mystery about the sensitivity. You're like extraordinarily sensitive, and what problem is this connected to? Like it
Yes,
feels
totally.
terrible, but you
Yes.
can't pinpoint it necessarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a part of it. And in those times, then I rely on all of the Leo and Gemini energy that I have to like get me going, get me out of the stuck rut and start moving forward.
Plus, your Gemini energy is in the 11th house, which is really willing to explore the alternative route. And it's
Yeah.
willing to do the research that it needs to do to figure out how to take care of oneself.
I do love the research. That is true.
Yes.
What can you tell me about all of the Leo energy in my chart? Where
Yeah,
is
well, you've got Mercury and Jupiter sitting next to each other in Leo, and Mercury is the messenger communicator, and Jupiter is the planet of abundance and growth. So first of all, you're the big messenger. You're the big-hearted messenger because Leo rules the heart. You are a natural leader with your words because it's there in Leo, and it's also in your first house, which has a lot to do with how people experience you when you walk in a room. It is a really wonderful antidote to the tendency to be much more hidden with the Cancerian energy. And this helps you bring forth the sensitivity in your leadership.
Okay. That's excellent to know. Thank you.
Yeah. And over the next, like on May 10th, Jupiter moves into Aries,
Okay.
and that's a fire sign. So it will ignite the fire in your chart. So it will ignite that Leo energy more so than the Cancer energy.
Oh, that's so exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't listened to Heidi's podcast yet, I highly recommend it. You did an episode a couple of weeks ago that I just wanted to link back to a little bit, if you don't mind
Yeah. Sure.
recapping
Sure.
a couple of things.
Yes.
As much as I enjoy hearing about my own chart, I know that other people will be really interested in this too, because this is it's a very international audience and a very woke audience.
Good.
So we've been having so many problems in Ukraine. My mother is Ukrainian, and my dad is Native American.
Oh, wow.
And so I came in with that karmic powerhouse, let's say.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
And I was listening to your podcast and hearing about how you did a certain man's chart. And I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, just because that's what we have happening in our world right now.
We're looking at Zelensky.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there have been other astrologers that have been doing far deeper dives, but sometimes I
Okay.
do these. Sometimes I'm so delighted by how clear astrology is, like
I
I'm
mean,
just
it's
like,
insane, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you look at Zelensky, who is the standing for the voice of democracy in our
Yeah.
world at this moment, right? And it's just
Yeah.
like, and in an interesting way, is showing up in a very Leo way because he's having to be the center point of this conversation about democracy. So he has the moon in Leo, he has Mars in Leo, he even has Saturn in Leo. So he's got tremendous amount of Leo energy. But of course, the most important thing is he's got a sun in Aquarius, conjunct Venus in Aquarius,
Okay.
exact same degree. And Venus is this magnetic energy. Aquarius says we are more together. Aquarius stands for freedom and democracy and equality.
Hmm.
And it's in his ninth house, which is the house of the spiritual path, but also of expanding our horizons and broadening our perspective and becoming planetary citizens.
Yeah.
And so, and all of this was revving up. I mean, he had Jupiter hit his sun last year, he had Saturn hit his sun. So this tremendous responsibility and this tremendous
Mhm.
visibility. Not only that, he's Gemini rising, which
Yeah.
is the messenger. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are simple things, but they're so clear and concrete about how astrology works. And many, many world leaders and many of our presidents have had strong Aquarius, because Aquarius stands for humanity. I mean, it can also, every sign can have a wretched manifestation and can
Right.
have a very conscious manifestation, but the conscious, when Aquarius is conscious, it is the sign of the humanitarian.
I think it's so incredible how astrology is so true, even when we're not looking at it, even when we're not looking at the progressed moon, we're not looking at the rise, we're not doing anything to really examine what's about to happen. It's just true.
Yeah,
It's so
just
wild to me.
the map of the heavens. There's this poem that David White has, from this poem called Auguries, and he says that basically you get to the point where he says, you know, you're looking up at the stars, but then we are nested at the heart of the pattern, which I love. You know,
Yeah.
like here we are under this great canvas of these great stars and planetary beings, and we are right at the heart of the pattern, and that is our birth chart, the picture of that pattern from, you know, the moment we were born.
I love that so much.
We are being all asked to step into the highest manifestation of the energies we were born with, to make sure that consciousness is raised and love is increased and intelligence is magnified, so that we make the right decision, you know. And I will say, we went through some horrible transits, you know, in 2020,
Hmm.
where we were deeply, 2020 and 2021, where there was just deep tension between Uranus and Saturn.
Yeah.
Look, old systems have to crumble. There's no doubt. And
Yeah.
we are in the middle of Pluto and Capricorn. We're in the middle of old structures and old ways crumbling.
Yeah.
But we all have to wake up, and we all have to make sure that, uh, yeah, we are no doubt entering the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius says we have to do this together. It's no longer an individual journey of enlightenment. Like, we have to wake up together.
I couldn't agree more. And if you look at what was happening throughout the pandemic, people were waking up all over the place.
So many people had radically different experiences, and of course there was tremendous loss, and you know, some really suffered, many suffered,
Yes.
and suffering sometimes wakes us up, and some were allowed to have this space of silence and inner turning
Yeah.
that reoriented us, you know, what is important here.
Exactly. And I
Yeah,
think that's been so helpful too because the suffering, I wish it wasn't always or not so often suffering leading to something
right.
beautiful.
Yeah,
But I think for most of us it was, I know for me anyway, it was a lot of suffering. And I think for most people it was. But at
yeah.
least there is kind of a rainbow at the end, if you will.
Yeah, my dad would always say, and I always would laugh, but he would say, if you don't have a spiritual crisis, then get one.
I'm
You
really
know,
sorry
because
about your
there
dad,
we,
by
we
the
know
way.
when we're at our edge, and when we're, you know, we're trying to evolve and grow certain qualities in ourselves. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry about your dad, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a difficult time. He was such a powerful love and influence in my life, and you know, I still feel him very present, of course, but it is a an adjustment.
It's a whole new relationship.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's right there. I can, you know, I talk to him all the time.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about how your spirit guides have worked their way into your business? Is your dad talking to you about the next big book?
You know what? For me, I've never, let's see, I would say when I think of spirit guides, what I think of is, I think first, I think of my own soul. I think about connecting with the voice of my internal wisdom, you know,
Yeah,
and the best part of myself.
yeah,
And then I think of the voices of the ancestors, and I think of how I'm buoyed by my lineage. And I, in some ways, wish I were more connected or like where I really did hear voices. But I don't. I think I have more of I don't know, I guess sensory experiences around, just like sometimes I'll feel like his hand. I'll feel like, oh, there's his big bare paw that's holding my
Mm,
hand or something like that. But
that.
I think that a lot of times a lot of times what we really need to do, as opposed to listening to outer voices, is listen to the true voice of love, wisdom within ourselves.
Right. I
I,
agree.
you know,
I think that can come through our guides, and I think over
mhm,
time of working with our guides for so long, we are eventually able to cultivate that. Some
and
people
yeah,
are born with it. I had to
yeah.
cultivate it. I know my mom had to.
Yes, beautiful.
It's been so wonderful to talk to you, Heidi. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for all of your beautiful artwork that you put out into the world. I can't wait to read the next book.
Yay. Well, thank you for
And
inviting me. Yeah.
of course. And where can people find you online? I'll drop your links below, but just so they
Yeah,
can do
just
your
the best
focus.
place to start is HeidiRose.com. And every morning I also post on Instagram at Heidi Rose Robbins. And there's a little message of inspiration there every morning. So that's also a good place to start.
It is. It makes my day.
Ah, you're sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
You too.